Glaubenssätze erreitet geschwind, erhöht in Armen das hartende Kind. Erreicht den Hof mit Ruhm und Not, in seinen Armen das Kind war tot.
Flat 2 is a major chord whose root is a lowered scale degree 2. It usually appears in first inversion as flat 2, 6, also known as a Neapolitan 6th or N6. The Neapolitan 6th appears most often in minor keys in place of diatonic diminished 2 in first inversion. The root of the flat 2 chord requires an accidental, which may be either a flat or a natural, depending on the key signature. What is the origin of the name of the Neapolitan 6th chord? Although the name Neapolitan chord is associated with the Neapolitan school of composers who were prominent in Naples, Italy during the 17th and 18th century, there's limited historical evidence to justify this connection. In fact, the chord predates this period and was used earlier in music history. The origins of this chord can be traced back to a chord progression from minor 4 to 5. For instance, in C minor, this progression would be F minor moving to G major. The inception of the Neapolitan chord arises when a neighboring chromatic tone embellishes the fifth of the F minor chord, in this case, C, adding D flat to the mix. Gradually, this embellishing tone replaces C, transforming the chord from F minor to the Neapolitan 6th chord, represented as a D flat major chord. Let's look at the diminished 2 chord in first inversion in C minor, a D diminished chord in first inversion, spelled D, F, A flat. To change this chord into a Neapolitan 6, one only has to flat the root of the chord, which in this case is D. A Neapolitan 6th chord in C minor would be spelled D flat, F, A flat, and the F would most likely be in the bass to place this chord in first inversion position. Listen to how a chord progression using the diatonic diminished 2 6th chord and then compare it to a progression using a Neapolitan 6th chord instead. One of the benefits or features of using a Neapolitan 6th chord is the chromatic surrounding of the tonic note. We see the D flat in the Neapolitan 6th chord is a half step above the tonic note C, and as the progression moves to the 5 chord, the D flat moves to B, the leading tone of C minor, a half step below the tonic note C. Like the diminished 2 6th chord, the Neapolitan 6th has a subdominant function. The Neapolitan 6th may be preceded by any chord that can go before the diminished 2 6th chord, such as 1, 4, or 6, and it usually leads to a dominant harmony such as 5 or 5/7. Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata provides a compelling case of the chord progression from Neapolitan 6 to 5/7. In both the opening bars and later in the recapitulation, Beethoven ingeniously employs the Neapolitan 6th chord in C sharp minor, the D major chord. His approach to this chord reveals his genius in misleading the listener's perception of the tonal center. By introducing the 6th chord before the Neapolitan 6th chord, in this case A major, Beethoven deceives the ear into interpreting the A chord as the dominant chord of the Neapolitan 6th chord rather than the 6th chord of C sharp minor. This deception continues as the Neapolitan 6th chord, sounding like the new tonal center due to the preceding A major chord, progresses seamlessly to the 5/7 chord of C sharp minor, G sharp 7. This progression firmly establishes C sharp as the tonal center. Notably, the transition from the D natural in the Neapolitan 6th chord to the B sharp in the 5/7 chord, the leading tone of C sharp minor, cleverly surrounds the tonic with two chromatic neighboring tones, enhancing the sense of resolution. Following this, Beethoven introduces the first theme of the sonata in the preceding bar, employing a typical Beethovenian chord progression of 1 to 5, further solidifying C sharp minor as the tonic key. However, this stability is soon disrupted by Beethoven's mastery of modulation, which he employs to fascinating effect throughout the sonata. The Neapolitan 6th chord can also resolve to the 5 or 5/7 chord through a cadential 6/4 chord. In Chopin's Nocturne in F minor, Opus 55, number 1, a striking feature emerges in his treatment of the major 3 chord, also recognized as the relative major of the piece. Chopin indulges in its use, weaving a compelling narrative through his repeated utilization of the major 3 chord's secondary dominant, akin to Beethoven's manipulation of tonal centers. He intricately oscillates between the 5 chord of F minor and F, and the 5 chord of A flat and A flat, creating a mesmerizing ambiguity for the listener. This continuous interplay prompts a lingering uncertainty. Are we rooted in F minor or A flat major? This ambiguity persists until the progression from the 3 chord to the Neapolitan 6 to cadential 6/4 finally resolves to the 5/7 chord, decisively establishing F minor as the tonal center. In both previous instances, we've witnessed how the Neapolitan 6th chord introduces tonal ambiguity. Our next example illustrates how a composer can leverage this chord to evoke a sense of being drawn towards a new tonality. In the first movement of Beethoven's The Tempest, during the recapitulation, Beethoven employs the Neapolitan 6th chord to initiate a modulation to a related key. Initially established in D minor through the A7 chord, Beethoven introduces a moment of tonal uncertainty in measure 185 with the Neapolitan 6th chord and E-flat major chord. However, he skillfully resolves this chord back to the 1 chord through a diminished chord. Through a series of dominant 7 chords, the music eventually returns to the home key of D minor. This progression mirrors the narrative of Shakespeare's play, where the sorcerer Prospero conjures a storm through magic. The inability to pinpoint a tonal center in this music reflects the confusion and manipulation experienced by the sailors in response to Prospero's sorcery. In Schubert's Erlkönig, we encounter another instance of the Neapolitan chord, this time presented in root position. Similar to what we explored in our previous discussion on augmented 6th chords, Schubert adeptly employs tonicization, briefly shifting the focus to the augmented 6th chord before returning to the original tonic. In Erlkönig, Schubert employs the same compositional technique, extending the tonicization of the Neapolitan 6th chord starting in measure 143. He skillfully utilizes the root of the flat 2 chord as a pedal point. Demonstrating his prowess as a songwriter, Schubert overlays the words with one last effort he reaches home, with the Neapolitan 6th chord and its associated diminished chord. This craftsmanship is evident in how Schubert aligns the perceived major chord with the narrative as the father desperately tries to save his son. However, the realization dawns that this perceived major chord is not a new tonic, but merely a prolongation of the inevitable conclusion, his son lying lifeless in his arms, as the chord resolves in a typical cadential resolution to the minor 1 chord. The emotional weight of the scene is powerfully underscored. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to check out some of our other videos. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to be up to date with our newest videos. Thank you.